What's good, YouTube? You already know who it is, man. It's your boy Jerry Fit, and we are back to react with what's new on the tube, bro. We got a special body cam banger for y'all today, man. Cops make the most horrifying discovery in the woods. Now, this channel is new to me. It just started showing up on my feed, and I seen that they post really good body cams. And you guys know, like, we like body cams like this, where it's like storytelling and body cams, and we get to see how it all unfolds, bro. So we're just gonna jump into it, man. But you guys know what to do before we jump into it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications if you like videos like these, and let me know if you want me to react to any kinds of videos like these, man. Make sure that you can make sure that I can see it. Make sure you send it to me any way you know how. And let's just jump into this video, man.
I saw the pickup.
Gotta take my supplements, man. Sorry.
It kind of reminded me, you know, my uncle's truck.
Works at Hillside? That's
Yeah.
what I said. He should be in a tractor trailer. Hey, is my uncle driving today? Didn't show up today. He hadn't heard from him.
Oh,
On the
God.
morning of May 29th, 2019, when first responders arrived at the scene, one of them was left terrified as he realized the abandoned truck engulfed in smoke and flames belonged to his uncle, Philip Bucky Barlow. While investigating Bucky's disappearance, detectives were left shocked when the disturbing secret of an extremely sadistic individual who lived next door started to unfold.
Hey, tonight, that guy came up. I sent a message to Chris. The message said, if anybody comes asking, I wrote it to you guys all night.
What did he say?
If anybody comes asking, I wrote it to you guys all night.
Ah, hell no, bruh. Hell no. Now, I immediately would call 911.
We came across a call from a prison.
On the morning of May 29th, 2019, at 7:15 a.m., a woman in Preston County, West Virginia, called 911, describing an odd discovery. Responding to the concerning call, law enforcement was immediately dispatched to the scene on Shower Bath Road. When an officer approached the truck, he noticed that the truck was completely filled up with dense smoke, but to his shock, there was nobody inside. It looked as if the truck had malfunctioned and heated up, leading to an accidental fire.
Can cars do
However,
that?
taking a closer look in and around the scene, the officer found traces of oil inside the truck. These weren't ordinary circumstances.
Jesus, man.
The truck's odd condition.
Don't forget to take your supplements, y'all.
Now, detectives needed to find whose truck it was, and what sinister secret could this truck be hiding?
It almost seems as if somebody's probably trying to set this one on fire.
The officer immediately requested fire services. The local fire department arrived at the scene in no time. However, they couldn't have known that they were in for a surprise.
Some sort of oil or lubricant or something.
Was that blood on the back?
Some sort of oil or lubricant or something.
Jesus.
Local fire chief and one of the first responders, Perry Barlow, noticed something odd about the whole situation. The truck looked familiar
Oh,
to him.
shit, bro.
When he walked closer and took a glance at the license plate, it seemed as if his soul had left his body. Perry knew who the owner of the truck was.
I saw the pickup.
The registration was run on it.
What comes back to what, Phil Barlow?
It was identified as Philip Barlow's truck.
Damn,
That's
man.
my uncle. I'm thinking, well, why is my uncle's truck here on Shower Bath Road? Why isn't he here? What's going on?
Works at Hillside? That's what I said. He should be in a tractor trailer.
It turned out that the truck belonged to Perry's 61-year-old uncle named Philip Barlow, affectionately known as Bucky. Perry feared that his uncle could be in danger.
They dumped oil all over inside of it and tried to set it on fire.
The investigation of this fire, it was pretty cut and dry. When you see motor oil, still residual motor oil laying on the rear seat, it was deliberately attempted to be set on fire. Motor oil is a combustible, but it's not a very fast burning. It never got a good start.
Perry was sure that something wasn't right because it didn't seem likely that Bucky would just set his truck on fire in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that'd be weird, bro. I wonder how it must feel to, like, be the lead
My
detective
first
and
thought
it's your
was
family.
that somebody possibly stole the truck.
Perry told the detectives that Bucky should be at work right now. Hoping he'd be there, he called Bucky's workplace, but he got an answer which made him even more worried.
the drive today? Didn't show up today. You hadn't heard from him. Something's wrong because he was very punctual. He was always early.
This was another cause for concern. A 61-year-old man had vanished, leaving behind only his truck in a very
it's definitely
wicked
something
situation.
shady.
The only thing clear at that point was that someone wanted to destroy that truck. Detectives spent hours extensively searching the area where the truck was found, but there were no signs of Bucky anywhere. Once the officers had secured and examined the scene on Showerbath Road, they headed to Bucky's home, hoping to find any clues that could help them figure out where he was. Bucky lived in Tunnelton, not very far away from where his truck was found. It was only a 10 or 15-minute drive. When detectives arrived at Bucky's address, they didn't find any signs of a disturbance or anything that seemed out of the ordinary in the area. They knocked on the door, but nobody answered. Since the detectives had no cause to break into Bucky's home at that time, they decided to leave. Officers then got in touch with Bucky's friends, who told them about Bucky's girlfriend, Mary Butler. At the time, Mary was living in Indiana, so the detectives could only get in touch with her through a call.
I got a phone call on May 29th that Bucky did show up for work and that they found his truck. I had 50 million things running through my head at that time. Where could he be? What should I do? I knew there was something wrong.
That's tough, bro. So everybody, like, the first thing that they say is that, like, you know something is wrong, like, when he doesn't show up to work. That's how you know that man's dedicated, bro. That's how I'm trying to be known, bro. Hard-ass worker, man.
Find him alive.
I know, I do too.
Prayers, man. Prayers.
Mary told the detectives that the last time she spoke to Bucky was the night before. Bucky would often leave for work between 12:15 and 12:45. So sometime around midnight, Mary and Bucky would have their regular catch-up calls.
I was at my mom's when Bucky called me when he was getting ready for work.
I told him that I would call him back. And 15 minutes went by, and I called him, and I didn't get any answer.
Bro, in that
Bucky knew that Mary was going to call him a little later, but when Mary called him, there was no answer. And although this struck Mary as quite odd, she didn't think too much about it, thinking he might have been occupied with work. But even with this information, it was hard for the investigators to determine where Bucky went after his truck was set on fire. They'd requested a ping on Bucky's phone, and the results did offer them a few clues.
It was about a half a mile from his house when it stopped transmitting. The direction it traveled was the direction he would have went to go to work. We searched the area for the phone, but we were unsuccessful in finding it.
At that point, Mary gave them permission to search Bucky's residence and check for any clues that could point them in the right direction. Sadly, when they entered the house, it looked untouched. There was nothing that seemed odd or out of place. No signs of a break-in or any kind of...
That's interesting, man. You guys think he went off on his own? Maybe faked his own death or something?
In his house. Not finding anything inside the house, officers decided to canvass Bucky's neighborhood and interview people in the area to see if anyone had witnessed any activity.
Stopping is your neighbor there. I wonder if you happen to know when he left. Did you see him leave or?
No.
Sadly, none of Bucky's neighbors claimed to have seen or heard anything the night Bucky went missing. The following day, officers called in extra help and resources to escalate their search efforts. In addition to the National Guard, aerial and canine units were also employed to help in the search. The search went on for the next 10 days, but despite all the extra effort, officers returned empty-handed. All hopes of finding Bucky were starting to fade away.
So it's been 10 days since they seen him, bro?
They were approaching a dead end. They received a chilling phone call from a local hunter, which turned the case even more horrifying.
Preston County 911.
Working down here hunting, we came across a ball in a creek.
The creek is called Fort East Mill. From Tunnelton, it's about a 20-minute drive to get there. Very isolated area. Once I got on scene, myself and another officer were able to approach the body. It was moderately decomposed. He did not have a shirt on.
That's so
His
crazy.
jeans were around his ankles. He was face down in the water.
Looking at the body's gruesome condition,
Bro.
it was hard to identify. It was only because of the dentures that officers were able to identify the deceased as Philip Bucky Barlow. Officers could tell that Bucky had been through extreme torture and pain, but it was the autopsy report that fully shed light on how sinister Bucky's last moments must have been.
Prayers to the family,
There was a
bro.
significant injury to his throat area. The jugular was cut, artery was cut, the esophagus was severed, trachea was severed.
Mr. Barlow was, for all intents and purposes, completely decapitated.
Oh, hell
He
no,
was
bro.
just as brutally injured as you can imagine.
Even so, detectives had no clue that this wasn't even close to the far more sinister things they were about to witness. But for now, it was time to pass the news on to Bucky's loved ones.
Shaw. You know, you don't want to believe that it actually happened. Nobody should die that way.
I was hysterical because I didn't want it to be true.
Lost my best friend. I'm not one to show emotional, but it tore me up inside bad.
Yeah, that's tough.
The family wanted answers. Bucky did not deserve this.
Seems like he was a good
Since
dude,
in
bro.
such situations,
Smiling in all the
victim's
pictures, man.
close ones are questioned first. The officers called in Mary for an interrogation. After hours of asking her questions, Mary was eventually asked to take a polygraph test. She passed. There was nothing pointing towards Mary's involvement in Bucky's cold murder.
I loved him. We had a good relationship most of the time.
Mary wanted to help the officers as much as she could. She gave them a new name, Craig, Bucky's neighbor, who quickly became a person of interest. Mary remembered something strange Bucky once told her, something she hadn't thought about until now.
I knew there had been an argument and a scuffle with Craig, and I said, stay away from him. Just leave him alone. Don't say nothing.
A while ago, Bucky had been in an altercation with Craig, and from then onwards, the two of them stopped seeing eye to eye.
Craig was living in the back trailer behind Bucky. There always was bickering and fighting back and forth all the time. He would cut through the yard, and Bucky didn't like it.
It's embarrassing. I mean,
So
that's
that would
shameful.
cause arguments. So on Sunday, Bucky decided he wanted to cut the grass. And Craig had left some stuff on the grass. Then Bucky had called me and told me about the scuffle. Then that's when he came up missing.
Following the lead given by Mary,
Dude,
officers
shout out
immediately made their way
the
to
girlfriend,
Craig's residence
bro.
to question him.
So, what's this about an argument you had with Bucky? Was it true?
We really did. I ain't gonna lie to you.
He explained the conflict that he had with Bucky was about the property line.
Craig didn't deny any allegations about the argument. He told the detectives that the dispute began when Bucky accused him of leaving garbage bags on his property.
I mean, he could move. And I'd have run to the truck. I grabbed it off about his back. I chased him around. I wasn't close enough to him, but I did swing it at him.
Additionally, Craig said the incident occurred only about a week before Bucky went missing. However, he denied being involved in Bucky's murder in any way.
Craig denied that he had any knowledge or participation in anything that may have happened to Bucky.
That's crazy, dude.
The night that Bucky disappeared. He
So,
said that
like, two separate incidents that, like, you have conflict where people are mad at you. Right after I said, like, it seems like this guy's a good dude.
night he had been
See what's
working
going
on the
on in the
radio
background.
in the truck. He described the location. It's a back road.
I slept in that Ranger.
You slept in the Ranger all night.
Yeah.
Was anybody with you?
Uh,
I did question him. Why would you sleep in your truck that night when your residence is fairly close? At some point, you're going to wake up in the night. Would you agree with that? You're going to be like, I'm going to go home. I'm only 5 minutes away. And he described that that was not out of the norm for him.
I did not leave this far.
A lot of the things Craig told the detectives weren't making sense at all. Making them think he was off the hook. Investigators decided to fact-check his story,
Shit.
which raised some concerning doubts. According to Craig, the truck he slept in belonged to a friend named Chris. After interviewing Craig, officers reached out to Chris and his wife Debbie, and what they revealed would cast even more suspicion on Craig.
So maybe I was just
Craig was
bullshitting.
hiding a secret and they needed to figure out what it was.
That guy came on the phone. Greg sent a message to Chris. The message said, if anybody comes back.
Oh, that was about him. Oh, okay. Yeah, Craig, you're cooked, buddy. I'm not going to lie.
Have you talked to Craig since this guy went missing? No text messages?
No. Nothing about it.
He denied ever seeing a text message from Craig asking him to provide him with an alibi. Chris, during the initial interview, said that he was home pretty much the entire night. He denied any knowledge or any participation in Bucky's disappearance.
Careful with your phone.
We were able to corroborate, at the very least, Chris's phone was at his residence.
After the interview, officers went through Chris's cell phone records, which helped them determine that Chris and Debbie weren't involved in Bucky's murder. It seemed like Chris and Debbie were being honest with the investigators. Now it was time to bring Craig in for an interrogation and confront him. According to the officer,
So who was
the best way
lying?
to do this was by making Craig take a polygraph test.
Well, let me get you all strapped in here.
Craig was asked to polygraph.
Did you in any way participate in the disappearance of Bucky?
And he passed that polygraph.
All right, torture's over.
Wow.
As shocking as it was, Craig passed the test. Investigators then decided to search Craig's cell phone with his permission. However, they couldn't find what they were looking for.
We didn't find anything to suggest that he was a part of the
Oh,
disappearance.
that's a lot of twists and turns in this
Debbie's
one.
allegation that Craig sent a text message requesting an alibi was never corroborated. Officers never located that text message.
The absolutely ridiculous amount of false information and rumors that were spread. It severely impeded getting this case resolved.
That's tough,
So
man.
once we ruled them out as potential suspects,
Appreciate that.
we were basically back to square one in the investigation.
Since detectives found no leads from Craig, they shifted their focus to the evidence gathered so far. But due to limited information, the case went cold for nearly 8 months without any significant developments. But then, in January 2020, while reviewing statements from those they'd initially questioned, detectives noticed a small but significant clue.
Did you guys are home all night?
Who are these people?
It was Bucky's neighbors, Laura Martin and Robert Quinn, both of whom had initially told investigators they knew nothing about the murder. They insisted they were inside, and a noisy air conditioner kept them from hearing anything outside the day Bucky disappeared. Detectives also observed that, although their stories aligned, the way they delivered them lacked the same spontaneity.
It's like your vehicle pulling in, and if you step inside the house there and you can't hear nothing because we got an air conditioner going.
The focus on minute details and the repeated emphasis on the noise distraction raised suspicion against them.
That's
So
crazy.
detectives decided to interview them again, but this time they weren't at their home. Instead, they were already in custody at the Garrett County Detention Center on unrelated charges.
Bro.
So detectives went to the Garrett County Jail to question Robert.
I'm still working
No
on
way.
figuring out all the circumstances with Bucky's disappearance and death. How much did you know him?
Really not very good.
Okay, and you didn't hear anything?
We had the air conditioner on.
Just like before, Robert stuck to his air conditioner story. But he had no idea his attempt to hide the truth was about to fall apart.
That's crazy. They're already
After
in jail
Robert,
for
when
something else. I
detectives
wonder what they were in
questioned
jail
Laura,
for.
She unknowingly contradicted her earlier claim by giving a completely different reason for not hearing anything that night.
Did you hear anything that night?
No, like I told you then, I had to washer and dryer running.
Unlike her initial claim, she now said the noise from the washer and dryer kept her from hearing anything, which immediately exposed their
That's
lies.
tough.
This revelation undoubtedly strengthened the detectives' suspicion of the couple. To further challenge their story, detectives spoke with the couple's neighbor, Janice Maxwell. Janice informed them that the couple had never owned an air conditioner. This made detectives certain that the pair was hiding something about their actions that night. When investigators took a closer look into their past, they found out that Laura and Robert were no strangers to the world of crime.
I mean,
Detectives
duh.
also learned that from a very young age, Laura was raising 2 daughters on her own after separating from their father, and from 2002, she started engaging in crimes like burglary and abduction as a means of making a living.
Why,
In October
though,
2018,
bro?
She met Robert through an ex-boyfriend, and the two quickly fell in love. In 2018, Robert
Was that
moved
picture
into
really
Laura's house
necessary?
on number 4 Road, where she lived next to Bucky. Despite being neighbors, Laura and Robert had never been kind to him. The main source of their conflict was their dog, which often wandered onto Bucky's property, something he strongly disliked. This led to frequent arguments between them. However, to gather more leads in the case, detectives reached out to the Garrett County Jail authorities to obtain all of Laura's and Robert's jail calls. Detectives believe that if Laura and Robert had killed Bucky, they might have mentioned it in one of their jail calls. After reviewing all the call recordings, detectives found that Robert had made very few calls, while Laura's call list was extensive. The
Oh
call
my
records
gosh.
revealed that, despite being in a relationship with Robert, Laura had been frequently calling her ex-boyfriend Mark from jail, and their conversations were sexually explicit. But unfortunately, despite reviewing the jail calls, detectives found no direct evidence connecting Laura or Robert to the murder. The only remaining way to prove their guilt was to obtain a confession, but detectives knew the couple wouldn't reveal the truth that easily. If they could manage to turn Laura against Robert, it might work in their favor. Accordingly, they came up with a plan, and on October 7th, 2020, sat down for another round of interrogation with Robert. This time, investigators already had a plan, but they were unaware of the dark secrets their strategy would soon lead them to.
Oh God,
The detectives
dude.
first put Robert at ease, and then revealed some harsh truths about Laura that he'd never known.
Do you know what her relationship is right now with her ex?
No.
Okay, it's probably not exactly what you think it is.
You know what I need? You for about 20 minutes. You know I'll take it one more time.
Oh my gosh, bro. No way. No way. No way the detectives actually played the recording, bro. No way, bro. Going outside for a female, man.
Better be thinking when I get out.
Going outside, bro. And then to say I love you after?
You just heard it.
Detectives played Laura's jail call with her ex-boyfriend, and as Robert
They,
processed the
like,
betrayal,
bro,
his demeanor
she's
shifted.
wrong for that,
He
man.
started distancing himself from her, making a shocking claim that it was actually Laura who had killed Bucky that night. He went on to reveal what had motivated her to commit the crime.
I'm done bullshitting right here. How much money did you hear about? Thousands, wasn't it?
Okay.
He claimed that the plan to rob Bucky was entirely Laura's idea. After hearing about Bucky's retirement, she assumed he might have a significant amount of money with him. He then provided a detailed account of how the murder was carried out.
Went sideways, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did it go sideways?
She went over Bucky's bar stuff, and she was standing there waiting for him to get to work. And whenever I come off his porch, she grabbed hold of him, tried to rob him, and they put up a fight.
Robert claimed he had no idea that Laura intended to commit murder. According to him, during the robbery, Laura suddenly turned violent and began physically attacking Bucky. When Robert came outside to intervene, Bucky was already unconscious. Unable to reverse what had happened, they loaded his body into the truck and drove to a remote local creek to dispose of it. On the way, Laura threw Bucky's phone out of the truck to prevent anyone from tracking their location. And after disposing of the body, Laura drove the truck back and set it on fire in an attempt to destroy all evidence. After the interrogation, detectives asked Robert to help them recreate the events by returning to the location where Bucky's body was disposed of. He agreed, and once there, he walked them through his version of what happened that night. And once Robert started to reenact the ominous events from that evil night, everyone was left in chills.
He sat right here on the ledge. All right, okay. She took his wallet.
Started to get down on her knees and that.
Okay, can you kind of recreate what you saw her do?
She come up behind him, and she got him by her head, and she kind of like stabbed him in the front of the neck and went around to the side. And he was on his knees for like 2 or 3 minutes, and he fell over, and then she rolled him in the water. Well, it had like $50. I told her I said it really wasn't worth the man's life. She said, "Well, you just shut up, or you'll be the next one." Okay. And I didn't say any more to her.
Detectives recorded the entire reenactment.
Killed somebody for
and then took
$50
Robert
fucking
back
dollars,
to jail.
bro.
He might have thought that he'd cleared himself by shifting all the blame onto Laura. Detectives were ready to turn his own account of the events against him, which would eventually turn Laura and Robert against each other.
It was supposed to be a burglary, and that's my idea. I'm not even gonna lie.
Okay.
But as far as killing him, no, that was not my idea at all. Like, I don't have it in my heart to hurt anybody, not like that.
After learning that Robert had shifted all the blame onto her, Laura opened up. She admitted that while the robbery had been her idea, the murder was not part of her plan. It was Robert's. On the night of May 28th, they waited outside Bucky's house, wearing masks and gloves, ready to carry out their robbery plan.
We had BB guns, but they looked like regular guns. It was a struggle with all three of us. I mean, I wasn't letting him get the best of me.
She claimed that she tried to stop Robert, but he didn't listen, instead shouting at her to follow his instructions. Robert then took Bucky in the truck and drove to the creek where he performed the cruel act of killing.
Bobby pulled a box cutter out, and I'm like, what the? Then I saw Bobby cut it. I shoved Bobby, and I put my hands on Bucky's neck, and I'm looking at Bobby and I'm crying, and I'm like, please don't do this. And then Bobby's like, I'll do you too.
Yeah, dude, I feel like this a
It was the
lot.
look in his eyes I had ever seen in my life, and it scared me. It really did.
I'm just trying
She
to
also
protect
claimed
each
that
other.
She tried to save Bucky's life, but couldn't, as Robert threatened to kill her as well if she didn't comply with his orders. As both Robert and Laura pointed fingers at each other, detectives now faced the dilemma of determining who was lying and who was telling the truth. But one thing was certain, that they were both involved in the murder, and they were formally charged. However, the detectives still had to uncover the complete truth. In the end, it was surprisingly the inmates at Garrett County Jail who helped to uncover the final piece of the puzzle. Some of Laura's fellow inmates provided crucial details, stating that she'd admitted to killing Barlow during conversations with them.
Jesus.
She'd also made a statement so disturbing that even the most hardened perpetrators would struggle to imagine it. Laura said she was fascinated by the feeling of Bucky's blood flowing through her fingers and craved the experience again. Without any hesitation, she and Robert ate the sandwich from Bucky's lunchbox, their hands still smeared with his blood after the murder.
Nah, these people are sick,
This
bro.
revelation made it unmistakably clear that Laura was a twisted psychopath
Yeah,
and
no,
the mastermind
definitely.
behind the gruesome act. Detectives also discovered that Laura had always been the dominant force in the relationship, manipulating Robert into becoming her accomplice in the crime.
So Robert wasn't
However,
lying.
detectives offered them a plea deal, which they agreed to. They eventually confessed the startling truth that they'd been desperate for money because their electricity was about to be cut off, and they targeted Bucky for the robbery. But the brutal way he was killed only revealed a deep-seated anger within them. In court, both pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and first-degree robbery in connection with the killing, and were sentenced to life in prison.
Bro, there's no way that they fucking said that their electricity was about to be cut off and that was the reason that they killed someone, bro. Like, there's so many other options that you always have before you need to resort to that shit. But I wonder what their punishment was after they agreed to a plea deal. That was a good reaction. I appreciate the channel for letting us use it. I'm going to have the name for you guys next time. I just forgot, but their account will be linked in the description. So